Hey, you're about to watch a message that has been recorded live at Grace Family Church, South Africa.
At Grace, we say, come as you are. And our mission is to love God, love people, and make a difference. And wherever you're watching this from today, we hope that you're encouraged by the message that you're about to watch up next.
Hey, welcome everybody to our service, our online service. This is the first service of 2021. Happy New Year to you. We're still in a little bit of our studio here. Don't you love the Christmas trees and Moses Mabhida Stadium? And I'm really excited. I get the honor of preaching in the first Sunday of 2021. I don't know how it feels to you, but for me, it really feels a little weird. 2020, it just kind of wasn't the best year ever. What I thought I would ask you to do, give a rating out of 5. 1, 2020 was terrible. 5, it was the best year of your life. And just give it to your online host. Greet your online host. Say, how's it? And just give a rating out of 5, 1 out of 5. There's no zeros. You can't do like a -1. No, that's not acceptable. It's a 1 out of 5. For me, you know what? We were in lockdown in a new place that we were renting for a year, and it was by the sea. So from that perspective, it was a 5 out of 5. But for some of the stuff that happened, Christine broke her ankle during lockdown, and she had to go in for surgery. So I suppose I could average it out 2.5 maybe. I'm playing it safe here. Anyway, so as we move into this new year, how's it feel for you? I mean, let's face it. I know for me, generally, I come to the end of the year, I'm tired, I'm fatigued, and we go through the Christmas whole thing, and then we have Christmas to New Year, which is a kind of a hangout period, and then we get amped for the new year, making New Year's resolutions, having a promise about what God's going to do in the next year. But you know what? This time it feels a little different for me. And I was thinking about it. It feels like 2021 is almost going to be like 2020 extension. Because here we are. We're still not in-person gatherings. We still got COVID around about us all the time. It peaked during this whole holiday season. And it really is just a crazy, crazy time. And so for me, you know, I wish that the end of 2020 would be the end of COVID, would be the end of the financial crisis, people's unemployment. They would be gathering together in church services again. But as you can see, we're still online. Our preaching team got together a little while ago, and as we looked at 2021, one of the analogies came up as we kind of began to say, God, what do you want to do through us, through you guys in 2021? What has God got for our church in 2021? And we felt a little bit like it was going to be like a 12-round boxing match, you know, January round 1, February round 2. And we really envisage that we may come out in December 2021, just like a Rocky, you know, with our fists up there. I'm going to suck my tummy in here. And we kind of cheers. You know, I'm feeling a bit bloodied, but but at least victorious. So I don't know, you know, I mean, we've learned a whole bunch of things in 2020, haven't we? We've learned words like pivot and words like social distancing and online and Zoom and face masks and sanitizing and super spreader events. We've even canceling stuff like left, right, and center. So, wow, what about 2021? What's God got for us? And what can I say today? What can I share with you today that will inspire you, that will encourage you as we live in the reality of a changing world that I think is some of it's going to be changed forever. What can I share with you today? And as I was thinking about this kind of stuff, I thought to myself, well, what happened in 2020 that I can carry into 2021? What are some of the lessons, some of the things that I've discovered in 2020 that we can take into 21? And another thing I was thinking about, what do I need to adapt to? What do I need to kind of realize that actually, you know what, it's not like it used to be. There's this new reality, and how am I going to adapt to this? And as I was thinking about, my mind went into our fatigue levels, how tired so many of us got. I mean, there was the normal activities during 2020. You know, the normal stuff, the kids growing up, paying the bills, the insecurity in our country, the crime, and all that stuff. That's the normal stress that we face year on and year out as we go through life. But of course, COVID brought us the whole new kind of pressure, a whole new power drain on our lives. How contagious is this virus? And people who we know that have died or still are sick or in recovery. The global pursuit for a vaccine. I mean, there's this hope we're going to get a vaccine. During this time, added to this pressure, people have lost their jobs. Some people saying this virus is nothing. Some people talking about conspiracy theories. All of this stuff, it just was piled onto the normal stuff and has the ability to drain our power, to drain our energy, to take away from us the main thing. So I bought this battery pack a little while ago. We went on a motorbike trip and we were going to some very remote areas. And I have a GPS on my bike, and you know GPS aren't always the most trustworthy thing. Google Maps is much better. But anyway, I think Garmin went from doing GPSs to doing watches. Anyway, so I bought this battery pack because, you know, I wanted to make sure that my phone, it wouldn't be drained of all its power, all its energy. And I'll bring this battery pack and I could plug my phone in here. And so I could have this backup GPS that if we got lost in some of the remote areas that we were riding. And I was thinking about 2021, a little bit like the potential for our battery energy to be drained. And if we go into 2021 with a drained battery, we're not going to have this fulfillment. We're not going to have a sense of purpose and mission and an ability to love one another. These are the things that are going to evade us. It's as if we need to have a battery pack in 2021. We need something that when we get to the end of the day, that we still have some energy, that when we get to mid-year, there's still some energy. When we're part of, during the course of the day, when things are hitting us, we can take out our battery packs and plug into something else to give us that energy, to make 2021 not just a year that we want to wish would go by, but a year in which meaningful elements and meaningful things take place in our lives, that we will sustain our energy, that we'll keep the focus of our mission, and we'll really learn to love one another in new ways. So as I was thinking through all of this stuff, I thought, well, is there a biblical example to all of this? Is there something that happened 2,000 years ago that would be relevant to what it means to sustain energy, to be inspired, to stay on mission, without being overcome by all the energy drains that we're experiencing in our life? There's so many things that are draining our energy. And I thought to myself, well, what is there? And as I was thinking about it, I realized there's probably no COVID-19 back in the year 0 or the year 1 or the year 5 or whenever it was. But I do remember these 3 letters that the Apostle John wrote. Now, John wrote, he was one of the disciples of Jesus. He wrote his gospel, which, you know, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. But he also wrote some letters. He wrote 3 letters, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. Really original names for some letters, don't you think? You know, this is my 1 letter, this is my 2nd letter, this is my 3rd letter. Anyway, letters 2 and 3 were written, well, 2 John was written to a home church, a house church. And in it, he was warning these people about a change, about a new potential energy drain. In 3 John, he writes to one of the guys who, in a small group, in a home church, where the leader of the home church is kind of getting distracted and leading people into a different direction. Now, 1 John is a summary of his gospel. It's a summary of what he writes in 2 and 3 John. And he longs to bring to these people a witness, an account of who Christ is in the midst of this. And his appeal to them is for them not to lose focus, not to lose their energy in their faith. And so he writes to these guys. Now, we remember that the people he wrote to in Asia Minor at the time, they were under Roman occupation, and for the Christian church, much of the Christian church was being persecuted. Nero was one of the emperors in that era, and he annihilated Christians. And so there was that pressure. But now there was a power drain in these churches. There was something sucking their energy, and that was people within the team. You know, it's easy to kind of contend with the enemy on the outside, but when it's on the inside, and it sucks you dry from the inside, because there were these false prophets, guys coming in the name of God, using scripture, that were taking them off, taking the eyes off Jesus, that they were focusing on something different. He writes these words in 1 John, and this is chapter 4, verse 1. He says, "My dear friends, don't believe everything you hear. Carefully weigh and examine what people tell you. Not everyone talks about God comes from God. There are a lot of lying preachers loose in the world." I mean, this is quite radical, and it's fairly kind of potentially presumptuous of me maybe even to share this as if I'm now going to be the guy who's going to bring you the whole truth. But I invite you to judge what I'm saying and to discern what God wants to do in and through this text. So it's interesting as he writes to them. In verse 3, he goes out and he says the following to them. He says, "But if someone claims to be a prophet and does not acknowledge the truth about Jesus, that person is not from God. Such a person has the spirit of AntiChrist, which you heard is coming into the world, and indeed is already here." So these people are coming with this so-called prophetic insight. They're coming in the name of God, talking about God. But what they're doing is they're actually distracting people from the person of Jesus. And John is saying to them, I want you guys to discern this stuff. I want you to understand what's going on here. And so he confronts the variety of these different energy drains in the lives of these people to get them back to understand their source, how it is that they will remain inspired, how they will stay on track with mission, how they will continue to love people and to be a difference in their society. Now, just as on the side note here, there's a lot of kind of talk these days around AntiChrist. And takes me back to listen, hold your seats, folks, to the 1970s, 1975, 1976, 1977. There was a guy by the name of Hal Lindsey. He wrote a book called The Late Great Planet Earth. He sold 35 million copies. He became an incredibly wealthy world. And he predicted the end of the world. His basic philosophy was that this generation, when Jesus speaks of the fig tree blossoming and all that stuff, and Israel coming together and being reunited, and Israel was formulated as a nation in 1948, and Jesus was going to come within a generation of that taking place, which means that Jesus was going to come in 1988, and there was going to be a rapture in 1981, and there was this computer. He spoke about this computer in Brussels. It was called the Beast, not the rugby player. A computer that was going to control us with a microchip. And then we won't be able to buy or sell in 666. And I'm telling you some of you don't know what I'm talking about, but some of you know exactly what I'm saying. And people were getting hyper kind of distracted around the Antichrist. And they said, hypermarket, there's the H, the Y, and the P. And if you turn them around, it says 666. Deep, eh? People talking about game, the store game, G-A-M-E. They also managed to get 666 out of that, and barcodes were the mark of the Antichrist. Well, you know what? Hal Lindsey was wrong. He was wrong. Jesus didn't come back in 1981 or 1988. As far as I know, if he has come back and we left behind, hey, we're in trouble, folks. And this is the reality. This is what we're dealing with. And this is a power drain back in the 70s that was going wrong. And the interesting thing about Hal Lindsey is that every 5 years he wrote, or every 3 years, he wrote 3 more books about this, pushing the date of Jesus' return out 5 years, and people still buy those books. Now, why do I talk about that? Because today, as we have these power drains in our lives, as we are getting embroiled with conspiracy theories. I mean, I can go back 50 years, and I've never had so many conspiracy theories being propagated so freely and so easily. I mean, genuine. People are really believing that the earth is flat. I mean, it's serious. And if you're one of those oaks, seriously, bro, come on now. Okay. Bill Gates is the Antichrist. I mean, do you remember at the beginning of this pandemic, there was this longing for a vaccine, You know, I read recently, I think they did a survey in Spain where only 50% of the people said they'll take the vaccine. Everybody else is waiting. There's this propaganda that goes around. I mean, within hours of them announcing that there was a vaccine, I got this message from this housewife telling us that all kinds of stuff in this vaccine, that basically they're going to harvest fetuses to make this vaccine. You need to fact check this stuff and all of this stuff. This is the stuff that we're contending with: strife, divisions, polarizations, all this stuff. You know what? Energy is a finite thing. You don't have an uncontrollable. It needs to be restored. It needs to be awakened. And when I read the Gospel of John, or the epistles of John, I realized that energy is limited. My energy is limited. I can take so many distractions in my life to where it becomes a really bad influence upon me, and I lose my mission, I lose my sense of being, I lose my ability to see and to love other people as well. There are 3 takeaways that I think that John addresses in the scriptures here that will help us in 2021 to keep our battery pack filled. So that we don't just rely on what we've relied on for the last many years as Christians, but as we enter into a new reality with the threat of COVID being with us for a little longer and other things going on in our world, we need a battery pack. And I think the battery pack is found here in the scriptures in 1 John chapter 4. The first thing he says, number 1, he says, preserve your energy by becoming more discerning. Preserve your energy by becoming more discerning. Just quit listening to the blah, blah stuff. I'll read this again. He says, my dear friends, don't believe everything you hear. Carefully weigh and examine what people tell you. Not everyone who talks about God comes from God. There are a lot of lying preachers in the world. Now, it's interesting. So often I find that Christians are the most gullible people. Sometimes Christians, they read something and a guy quotes a verse and a Bible verse and he does something on YouTube or something, and suddenly this thing goes viral and everybody thinks it's true. No. We need to sharpen our discernment up. We need to ask ourselves, is this thing moving me towards faith in God? Is this thing moving me to loving other people? Is this thing moving me to make a difference, to be generative towards someone else? And if the answer is no, then leave it. If you're interested, you can go to 2 websites. There are a lot of websites, and check stuff out. I mean, this is one of my favorite things. I go and actually fact check things. There's a local one called AfriCheck and another one called Snopes. Go and check this stuff out. And you'll see that there's so many of these rumors that drain of power that people are talking about and fighting about on Twitter and Facebook. Discern these things. If you discern these things and you leave the stuff that doesn't lead you towards God, to loving one another, and to making a difference in people's lives, leave it alone. It will just drain your power. This is part of the battery pack. Secondly, preserve your energy by contending with fear. Fear is a power drain of note. Let me say this, that capitalism thrives on fear. We need to get you scared to buy something. He says this in 1 John 4:4. He says, but you belong to God, my dear children. You have already won a victory over these people, because the Spirit who lives in you is greater than the spirit that lives in the world. Folks, we have the Spirit of God in us. We don't have to have fear. We don't have to have this perpetual sense of something bad is going to take place. But we can contend with it. You see, uncertainty drains our power. And we need to remind ourselves that we are children of God, that we belong to God, that we are His children. Doesn't mean to say everything will go right in our lives, but what it does mean to say that we have a source of power and of energy that we can contend with the fear. I mean, this morning I read something recently that they found another strain of COVID and they don't know. You know, I just can't contend with that right now. I don't need to deal with that thing, because when it's a fact, then I'll face it. But in the meantime, I've got to find a way to contend with my fear. And I love what he says, greater is He that's within us than he that's in the world. Folks, we need to just allow the Christ, the reality of who Jesus is, to fill our hearts and to fill our minds. The third takeaway is to preserve your energy by loving others. Preserve your energy by loving others. He writes in 1 John 4:7-8, he says, dear friends, let us continue to love one another. For love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God. But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. It's interesting, the other day I was watching a brief documentary on the early days of Grand Prix in the 70s and the 80s, and when Lewis Hamilton won his first Grand Prix, or let me say he lost his first Grand Prix. I think it was the Brazilian Grand Prix, I think 2007. He needed to win, or something needed to happen, and he was winning. And Goodyear were telling the team that the tires would be good enough to go the whole race. And then the tires blew, and he lost the World Championship by 1 point. And in the story that Lewis Hamilton says, he says the disappointment. This was his first potential World Championship. And he said this. He said, the team around me, the mechanics, the engineers, all the staff in the factory, they supported me. They were with me in that time. If we want to fill our energy, if we want to just get our energy battery filled up so that when we feel drained, the one way we do it is by engaging with people who are going to help us. Now, there's some people who aren't going to help you. Some people are going to exacerbate you with all kinds of conspiracies and all kinds of fears. You need to find a community of faith. You need to find people who will love you and whom you can love. You see, when I was thinking about this, for me, loving others, making your life about somebody else and loving others, it's like the Red Bull of Christianity. Man, it gives you wings. Andy Stanley taught us this question, and it's a great question. He asked us this question: what does love require of me? So when you see something online, what does love require of me? When you have something that's happened down the road, what does love require of me? Because there's something about so replenishing that when we love somebody else. The irony, the paradox is that when we extend ourselves, we are filled. Our battery pack is rejuvenated when it's released, when we give some of our energy, some of our love to others. So we change the game. Instead of polarizing conversations, we end them. We end those things. Fear-driven conversations, they find a dead end in our lives. That's what I want to take into 2021. Now, in the rest of 1 John 4, I could read the whole thing to you, but there are 2 verses around love that I want to read to you that kind of reinforce the love thing. The first one is 1 John 4:9. He says, God showed us how much he loved us by sending his one and only Son into the world so that we might have eternal life through him. Loving God. Loving God brings eternity to us now. We don't have to fear the unknown. We love God. And this is something that kind of over the years, I've been through various cycles. And I remember in some of my relationship with Christine where there was a particular season where things were really difficult between us. And so I made a decision just simply to say to her on a continuous basis, Christine, I love you. You know what happened when I said those words? Something inside of me began to change. It's like the neural pathways in my brain began to get altered, like a new flow of life just began to emerge from within by just saying, not feeling it. Hey, there was times that I didn't feel much love for Christine. Divorce, no. Murder, yes. No. If you've been married 44 years, no, 41 years. You see what I mean? This is what happens. I'm in the vulnerable age. If I forget things, you just got to say the dude's over 60. But I remember saying to Christine, I remember it. I love you, not feeling it. But as I kept repeating it, I felt that love and the feeling, the emotion began to be drawn into my world and into my life. And it's the same with God. Recently, I've taken up a little bit of a walk every now and again. And I find myself on the walk just simply saying, God, I love you. Jesus, I love you. Not asking for anything, just saying those words. Because God is love. And there's nothing more replenishing than being able to love. Love God, to love others, and to love the world in which we live. The second scripture, he says this, if someone says, I love God, but hates a fellow believer, that person is a liar. For if we don't love people, we can see, how can we love God whom we cannot see? 1 John 4:20. So this is the idea that we can't just simply say that we love God and then we don't love others as well. We need to love our neighbors. And that's not just people who are like us, who look like us, who think like us, who like the same music we do. We need to love people who are different to us. We need to see them as image bearers of who God is. So as I finish off this day, this first Sunday of 2021, can you believe it? It's crazy. Here I'm talking to a video camera and for you there. My first sermon I preached 44 years ago in a library hall in Bergville to 18 people. I never imagined that this would be our reality today. And so we can either take 2021 as an extension of 2020, or we can just say to ourselves, you know what? I'm not going to live with the same point of view. I'm not going to rely on the old energies that I've worked on in my whole life. I'm going to take a new battery pack into 2021. And you can leverage the things that you've learned in 2020. Yes, there's things, the lessons. They've been muscle-building things. Here at the church, Tom and Wayne and the team that are sitting right here in this recording, they've all had to pivot. They've had to extend themselves. And we've learned stuff. We need to take it with us as we move forward. And these are the things that we can create new habits and new practices that are life-giving and energizing, and not just get drawn into the negative things and the drains of our lives. We can live 2021 with energy, with a sense of mission and vision, a sense that God loves people and therefore they're important to him and they're important to us. And we'll search for them. So we recover our energy. We fill our energy batteries when we discern. We sharpen up a discernment. We stay away from dispowering dialogues, that we figure out, is this a conversation I need to engage in, or do I need to step back? Secondly, we contend our fear, because greater is he that's within us than he that's within the world. And thirdly, we ask ourselves the question, What does love require of me? And I think that will provide a battery pack that when you feel like you can't cope anymore and you're running out of energy and juice because of the way that you've practiced your life for the last how many years, that you'd find these new fresh ways. They aren't new, but they need to be reminded and to be filled once again. So as I finish off today, I'd like to declare a blessing upon you today. As we just take this moment, as we think about the year that lies ahead, the anxieties, the fears, the uncertainties, all that stuff. May God just fill you. May your 2021 be filled with the Spirit of God. May you develop a new sense of discerning, able to filter out the things that drain your energy. May you face the uncertainty and the anxiety of the future, knowing that Jesus is in you. That greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. And that you will contend with your fears. May you be bold and brave and seek what love requires of you. Because when you do, you will be filled with the Spirit. You'll be invigorated by the very life of God. May you know His power in 2021. God bless you. Thanks for being with us. Connect with our online hosts. Next week, we start this new series, which really takes these things and takes it into a whole new level. Join us next week, whether we're online or in person. We are filled with anticipation for a coming year. God bless you. Thanks for being with us.